Hello MIDI Comp. Today I'll do a vital walkthrough. So if you've never used this plugin before, this is a good place to start. I will try to go over every major feature. Now, when you first open this plugin in your DAW, you might want to check a bunch of plugin presets, just to see if it works and just to get the sense of what this synth can do. But when you want to really learn the synth, the most important thing is that you go over here, initialize preset. This is your starting point. Always start here. So try a few notes, and if it's too loud, here you have your volume control. So it might be more pleasant to work if it's not that loud. And first, you need to get familiar with the oscillator. So starting from here, and whatever you do, keep playing notes so you see immediate results. So here we have a transposition, fine-tuning. We also have this quantizer here, so you can basically snaps to those pitches. It's not very important to use it, so for now I will keep it disabled. We have oscillator, volume, you can pan it. Now, to the right over here, this is your waveform shape. You can click those arrows to get different wavetables. And the important thing is click and drag somewhere in the middle. Or you can alternatively drag the slider here. So we're going basically through different frames of the wavetable. Now, if you're not familiar with wavetable synthesis, it's probably better to switch to 3D mode. So now you see what's going on. And you can also compare it over here. We have an oscilloscope here, so you can see what really is going on. There's also a third mode, spectral, so there are three. For now, keep it in 3D. I will skip this feature, the editor, because this is like another full tutorial in order to do that. So stay with those waveforms, and after you're done, after you explore different wavetables, go and find something that's called basic shapes, and you can even add it to your favorite. This is something that I use all the time. It's very important to have it handy. So notice that now we can select classic, subtractive, synth shapes, waveforms. So for now, let's leave it on sawtooth, and let's move to the right. Here we have a unison section. So this is how you basically get this trans super saw. Notice what happens to the waveform. Right? You have a bunch of voices stuck together, and this unison detune determines how wide this spread is. If you want to tweak this unison further, in advanced options, this whole section is about, this whole section deals with unison settings, so you can really experiment and try different possibilities here. Now, phase, this is something that is useful for more advanced techniques, so don't worry about this for now. Phase modulation, we can do really interesting stuff, but usually, for now, just keep it at whatever default value was. And phase randomization, normally you want to keep it on 100% unless you're dealing with sine waves. So if you design sounds from sine waves, I usually remove that randomization, so it always starts at the center. All right, so moving forward, here we have two knobs that don't do anything for now. And by the way, let's go back to, yeah. They don't do anything unless you choose one of those formats. So again, pick one and experiment. Basically, you're transforming those waveforms here. In addition, we have the spectral mode. This also changes the waveform in some way, and it's hard to figure out what it really what it's doing unless you switch to spectral mode. So if you ever move this knob and experiment, it's probably good to change to this mode. It's much easier to figure out. You can just experiment. So it's very important that, you know, move all these knobs until you get this sense of what they are doing and how they shape your sound. And then we will go to the next module here. Notice that this oscillator is sending its signal to filter 1. Now, filter 1 is right now bypassed, so let's activate it. Right, so now the signal path goes from here to here and then through VCA. So once you're here, again, turn every knob while you're pressing a key to see what's going on. So here we have a traditional cutoff and resonance. In addition, there is something really nice over here, which is morphing between different filter types, almost like a SEM type filter. You can overdrive this filter, mix, and key tracking is if you want this filter to follow your keyboard. Very, very handy as well. And notice also the routing is indicated here. So right now we have only oscillator 1 coming to this filter. So it's very clean. And once you get familiar with all these sliders, you can also try different filters. There are different categories here, and you can try something like this. Right. For now, I will stay with the analog traditional filter for subtractive synthesis. So the next section that we need to explore is the envelope section. So envelope 1 is your main envelope. And at this point, you need to really try all of these knobs. Delay and hold, I would keep them on 0 for now. They are not that important. Focus on attack, decay, sustain, and release. So if you want to have kind of ambient pads, if you want to build them gradually, they probably, it's not yet, you know, won't sound very ambient unless we have reverb and stuff like that. But you get the point, right? This is very slow attack. You can even do slower. There's also zoom. Another type of sound is when you drop sustain to 0. And if you do that, I always match decay with release, more or less. In other words, they should be the same. And that's how you get plucky sounds. So experiment, move all these knobs, and when you're ready, try another envelope here. So let's extend this one. Try second envelope. Now this envelope doesn't do anything because it's not modulating anything. We have not yet assigned it to anything. So I'm going to connect this envelope to the filter. And in Vital, the way you do it, you simply drag and drop over here. Now I'm going to drop sustain to 0. And now it's all about tweaking. So don't skip this step and get the hang of it really. So first I'm lowering the bass cutoff frequency here to some lower frequency. And now this modulation amount is really shaping the sound. Notice that this modulation amount is accessible from both sides. So it's very, very convenient. All right, so that's envelope 2. Notice also that if you don't like the effect of this modulation, obviously you can go all the way to 0, but you can double click and it will disappear. So we deactivated this this connection now. So let's go back to what we had. So we can, maybe it's not, maybe not as aggressive and not as acidic. Something pleasant. And maybe this release is bothering me. All right, so we explored these envelopes. And by the way, if you use all three of them, you will get more. So don't worry, you have plenty of options here. So let's move to LFO. In order to get familiar with this LFO, we need to assign it to something. So maybe the easiest way would be to create a slight vibrato. So I dragged it from here to here. Remember, this is tuning. So let's open this filter a little bit. Right, so now LFO is modulating, fine-tuning. We can increase that, exaggerate it. And here's the thing. First, check this this note. You can change it to seconds. So it's the length of the cycle. In this mode, it's synchronized to your host. So you can do, let's say, quarter notes or 8 notes and so forth. You have dotted, triplet. Leave key track for now. This is more for FM synthesis and other really crazy stuff you can do in Vital, but not very important if you're just starting. And here we have trigger mode. So right now, this LFO will start every time I press a new note, but there are other modes. Like you can synchronize it to host. You can just have it as envelope. You can have some loops. So again, experiment, move every fader, every knob. Smooth is, by the way, if let's say you have something like this. So if you want to just smooth this edge, you can have this very quick access to that. Delay is after it's very good. For example, yeah, this kind of, you're simulating how real musicians would play a note and then start vibrating after a while. And stereo is also very interesting. What you're doing basically right now by just moving this stereo slightly to one of the sides is the whole path is doubled and you have a stereo sound. So they're effectively two different oscillators here. So once you're done with those basic experimentation, when you get familiar, you can also check this mode over here. You can also access it with, I think there's a shortcut here, which is, with Shift. No, sorry, it's with Control. So you can have, let's say, step. This is very good for like a step sequencing. So instead of fine tuning, we could just, we could control a much wider range here. Let's slow it down. So we have a 8-step sequencer right now. And if you want to have more fun, you can add scale here. I'm holding just one note, notice over here. All right, and finally you can explore different presets here for different shapes. So that's LFO. So we covered that part. And let's move to this section. These are also modulation sources. You have 2 random sources. So these are like LFOs, but basically slightly more interesting. So you have also frequency and this is randomized, different randomization styles here. You can synchronize, you can do stereo. So that's another option to get add a little bit of organic unpredictability to your sounds. And finally, we have those modulation sources. So note, notice that there's this indicator, the higher I play, the higher the value, so you can also assign it to something like a filter or something else. Velocity, for example. To give you, yeah, this would be a good example. The harder I press, the more open I want this filter to be. Right, so you can add expressiveness to your sounds. Another little trick. This is more advanced, so if it's confusing, then skip it. But try something like this: taking that velocity and dropping it over here, literally in the center of the circle. Remember, this is a modulation, kind of a virtual cable going between this envelope 2 and filter. Now, if you drop it on top, notice that it changes. And what happens now is that velocity determines modulation amount. Very elegant system. So, and in addition, you have lift. This is how quickly you lift finger of the key. So this can also add some expressive stuff. This is bizarre. This is basically a pitch class. So it will always give the same value when it's C sharp, and there will be another value at G sharp. So you can really create something weird here. Pressure and slide are related to MPE support. So if you have a Rolly keyboard or something like that, you can use these. Stereo. So stereo, basically you can drop it on any parameter and it will spread it in stereo. Right. So I detune these two, but I could also do something like maybe. So it's kind of we have two sets of stacked unisons here, and they are spread in stereo. And finally, random. So every time you press a note, it will be different pitch, for example. So experiment with all these, and at this point, notice that we have all the modulation sources over here, and you should really experiment what happens if you drop them onto different knobs and sliders here and here. There's so much you can do. However, on the left side, you also have something that looks like modulation sources. These are related to your keyboard. Let me give you an example. Let's say I want to control filter cutoff. Let's get rid of this for now. It's actually, I'm going to double click to get rid of any modulation. So now I can control this filter from here. And at the same time, maybe I also want to control this unison detune. I'm exaggerating now, but just to give you an idea, right? So now what I can do is, if you right click, you can do learn MIDI assignment. And on my keyboard, I moved one of the faders. If you have a keyboard with faders or stuff like that, you can basically access that here. So very handy. And you also can do something similar with mod wheel. For example, you can assign this mod wheel to the filter. And yeah, again, I think I drop it in the wrong place, but it should, hold on a second, I think I have too many modulation sources. Yeah, maybe. Oh, I'm not sure why it's not working now, but in theory it should work. I probably forgot about something. But anyway, everything on the left is related to your keyboard. Everything on the right, these are modulation sources from Vital, node velocity, and these also are related to keyboard. So they're kind of spread on both sides. So we covered everything now except this bottom row. So over here you have number of voices. Normally you can just leave them on max, or if you want to have monophonic synth, let's say some kind of baseline synth. So let's initialize it. Let's have a filter. So in this case, you want to switch to one voice. And this will allow you to take advantage of glide. And there are other options, always glide. Legato, basically now, if you overlap notes, they will not re-trigger this envelope. So again, experiment. I think the best way to learn is to try it while you're playing. In addition, we have velocity tracking. So that basically, it's a very simple way to add expressiveness to your instrument. So the louder you press, it affects basically this first envelope. And spread, if you have unison, you can determine how wide this unison should be. All right, so we covered pretty much everything on this first page. Now, over here, you have 4 tabs. So effects section, that's simple, just explore it on your own. You know, for those of you who love OTT sounds, the compressor is by default in OTT mode, so that's interesting. Just one thing that you should remember, you can always move them around. There's those handles, and you can reorder them the way you want. And finally, matrix. This is kind of redundant to some extent. Let's say I, just like before, we dropped this envelope on the filter, right? Now, this will also show up here. So envelope 2 is modulating filter cutoff. This gives you access to, bipolar setting, stereo. You can put some curve on it and amount. So if you have a lot of modulation, you can find everything here. In addition, you have this mod remap, so you can put a special curve. So it's very handy. I'd say that I always go, or I only go to matrix window if I want to adjust this curve. It's very useful. But apart from that, everything is visible over here between them. And by the way, notice that the effects section, you can also modulate it from envelopes. So if you have some crazy ideas, like, I don't know, modulating distortion amount from LFO, you can do everything like that. This is very, very awesome. So matrix. And finally, we have this advanced screen. So here we have settings for the unison, just like I mentioned before. Note track. For some advanced sound design, you can sometimes switch off this note track for some of the oscillators. For now, I think I would leave it on. I never changed this high-res wavetable, but maybe in some such settings you can hear the difference. Over here we have voice stealing. I mean, this will never play a role unless you run out of voices. So if you have max voices, most likely you don't need that. Master tuning, oversampling, just leave it. It's not such an important thing unless your computer is struggling. You can lower it. So notice that we pretty much went over the entire structure here, 4 tabs, and if you follow me till this point, you know pretty much everything you need. And now the only thing left is you can now activate more oscillators. They're all the same. There's 4th source here, which is very simple sampler. So basically you have a bunch of samples here, noise and some other stuff. And you can also tune it, level, pan. Key tracking is over here. Here's loop, different loop modes. So this is, this noise will keep looping. This, in this mode, it will start from random places. And if you activate this, the loop will go back and forth. So it's not a rocket science. And furthermore, you have a second filter. Now, if you now are at this point where you activated everything, the only thing you have to remember is routing. So it might be confusing. So the easiest way is to look at the filter and see what sound sources are routed here. So let's say I want all 4 sound sources to go through this first filter. I just do this. And then if I want this filter now to send that output to another filter, then I deactivate everything from here and I activate filter 1. So notice that you can do pretty complex routing here, either serial or parallel filtering. So this is something that might throw you off. So don't forget about constantly checking the routing. And it's also shown over here where it goes. Sometimes, if you have a sub oscillator, let's say we have a sine wave here and you tune it like, octave lower. Sometimes you want to send it direct out or maybe to effect. So there are extra options here. All right, so that's these are pretty much all features that you need. And if you, as always, if you have any questions or something is still unclear, I'd be happy to explain. But otherwise, have fun. Thank you, guys.